How do you install Mod Organizer and how do you set it up to mod the game of your choice? Those are the questions we are going to answer in this video. Now, if you do not know what Mod Organizer is, I did do an introduction to this series where I described what it is and who should be using it and also how it works, so you should probably go and watch that before continuing here. From now on in this series, I'm going to be working on the assumption that you know what this tool is, what makes it special, and basically how it works. And we're going to start focusing on how to actually use the tool. Obviously, before we do anything, we need to install Mod Organizer. So we download the file from the Nexus site. I'll leave a link down below. You go along to the file section and download the installer. There is a manual installation file as well, but the installer works just fine, so I recommend downloading that. Once you've got the file downloaded, simply double-click on the installer, and if you get prompted for a security warning, don't worry, click Run, and then Next, and I agree. And then you'll have this nice little setup wizard. I would leave all of the ones that are selected, all of the plugins, everything. Leave those selected. And in fact, I would recommend selecting the last two, the two that are not already selected. The handle Nexus links, what that does is it instructs your system that if you do something like download with Manager from Nexus, instead of downloading it to Nexus Mod Manager, as you are probably used to, it will download it using Mod Organizer. Now, if you are just trying Mod Organizer out and you don't want to sort of commit yourself at this time, you don't have to select that. If you change your mind later on, you can actually change it from Mod Organizer. It's not difficult, and I will show you how to do that. The Start menu shortcut I highly recommend. You're going to use this an awful lot. It's just so much easier to have it on your desktop. So that's what I'm going to select. I then click Next, and then I have to select where I'm going to install it. Now, Mod Organizer will only manage the mods for one game at a time. So if you are used to Nexus Mod Manager that will manage several of your games at once, this is different. You're going to need different installations for different games. So for example, if you are going to use Mod Organizer to manage your mods in Skyrim and Fallout New Vegas, you will need to install it twice. And for that reason, I recommend installing this game in the game's main folder itself. That way you always know where you can find it. The second thing I recommend with Mod Organizer and any of the games you're going to mod is to not install them in C program files x86. And the reason for this is there is a security system set in place under Windows that prevents other programs manipulating files found there. And obviously your mod managers are going to do that. Now you can get around it by running those tools in admin mode, but honestly I generally suggest getting around that completely by having your games completely somewhere else, in a totally different folder and perhaps even a totally different disk. And for me, that's what I do. And mine can be found, my Skyrim game, I'm going to install this for Skyrim, is found under my games SSD, Steam Apps, Common, Skyrim. So that is where I'm going to install this. However, don't worry too much if you've had to leave yours in the program files folder. You can still do it, just remember to run Mod Organizer in admin mode. So I've chosen the directory and it is simply now time to hit the install button. It will take a few seconds and then you will get a complete message and the option to run Mod Organizer immediately from this window. And that is really all there is to it. You can now run Mod Organizer and you will get this nice little splash, a message of the day, and if it is the first time that you have ever run the program, an option to start with a tutorial. And I highly recommend that if you have not used it before. And if you are installing this for multiple games, you just have to go through the process once more. So I'm going to install it for Fallout New Vegas. I'm going to have to once again select the location for that game. Steam Apps, Common, Fallout New Vegas, and install. And the process is pretty much the same. However, and this is the cool thing, it actually knows that I'm installing it for Fallout New Vegas, and when I run it, you'll notice it's New Vegas Mod Organizer, whereas the other one that I've installed, if I run that one, it is the Skyrim Mod Organizer. It is completely aware of the game that it is installed for. Now, if you do not want to install the Mod Organizer in the game's main folder for some reason, there is one disadvantage, and that is that you will not automatically get the game detected. So, for example, if I decide to install Mod Organizer in games, and I call it Mod Organizer, say, for New Vegas, just as an example, and I install it there, it will actually not know which game that I want to run. When I first run it, it will actually ask me, it will say, is this the game? It will list any games it has detected here, and it's already detected that Mod Organizer is running for Skyrim, so this is the suggestion. If you cannot find your game on this list, just browse for it. It should work just fine if you do it manually. And apart from that, it's pretty much the same. And lastly, on the subject of installation, if you need to install on the Program Files 86 folder, you may get this particular message. The way around that is to right-click the installer, run as administrator, click yes, and then do it like that. And it should work just fine then. But that is essentially it. You now have Mod Organizer installed for the game of your choice. And here we are in Mod Organizer. Now, it's split up into 4 main areas. There is the toolbar across the top. There is the left pane here, which has all of the mods that you've got installed, and the right pane, which has a lot more details, and then this bottom footer part, which gives you a lot of messages. For now, we're going to be looking up at the toolbar section and clicking this icon, the settings and workarounds. And you'll get a nice little pop-up window. The first thing you can change is language. So, if you want to change it to German, French, or any of the other supported languages, you can. You can also change the style. So, for example, the dark QSS style seems to be very popular, and that will change it to this sort of dark grey look. I do like this, but I'm going to leave it on none for this tutorial to leave the default look. Now that is all I would actually change at this point. The user interface, compact download interface, and download meta information may be worth checking out later. We will look at that when we start downloading mods. The next tab, and probably the last tab you need to look at this point, is the Nexus tab. This will allow Mod Organizer to log directly into Nexus and allow you to download mods. It'll even show you whether you've endorsed them, that type of thing. And I'm going to suggest you set it to automatically log into Nexus and type your username and password here. And if you remember during the installation process, I did mention that you could associate the Download with Manager links with Mod Organizer after you've installed, and this is where you do it. You simply click this button and it will associate all the Download with Manager buttons with Mod Organizer. And for now, that is all I would suggest changing. There is a plugin section, but that you can leave exactly as it is. The same is true with the workaround section. I would ignore those for now, and then click OK, and it will save that information. So those are the basic settings. Let's quickly look at the other areas just to familiarize ourselves with it. This pane is all the mods you've got installed, and as you can see, I by default have 6 mods: the Dawn Guard, Hearthfire's, Dragonborn and the high-res texture packs, they are all installed. They were not installed by Mod Organizer, hence the non-MO flag here. And if you stretch out the window a little so you can see all of the different columns, you've got mod name, flags, category, Nexus ID, version, installation, and priority. You can actually right-click on this area, anywhere on this area, and it will give you all of the different columns that are available. So for example, if you didn't want the Nexus ID to show, you could do that. You could actually just deselect it, right-click again, and as you can see, it's disappeared. In fact, you actually don't have to right-click, so you can just click them and click anywhere else. So the priority is fairly important. This is the order in which these mods get loaded. It's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as load order for Nexus Mod Manager, but if you think about it that way, for now, it's more or less the basic idea. Any of the files that are loaded in high-res texture pack 3 will overwrite files in earlier mods. And that leads us to this flag. You can see we've got an overwritten files flag. This says something below me has overwritten files. This says something below me has overwritten files. This here says I have overwritten files from a mod before. And this one says I have overwritten some other mod's files, but some other mod has overwritten files of mine. So you get an idea very quickly of which mods are overwriting files from other mods. You don't need to worry about this too much at this stage. If you really want to go and see the files in question, if you go along to Dawnguard and double click it, double left click, you get a pop-up window and you can go to conflicts and you can see these are the files I've overwritten from other mods, which are none, as it's the top mod, and these are the files of mine that are getting overridden by another mod, and the mod in question is High-Res Texture Pack 2 and 3. Oh, and Dragonborn. So 3 mods are overwriting files of mine. Don't worry about that. I expect everyone who's thinking of installing Mod Organizer is familiar with the idea of conflicts and not to worry about them too much. They are inevitable. They are part of the modding process. But there you go. You get some more information about it. Dragonborn is very interesting because, of course, it overwrites files from Hearthfires and Dawnguard, but some of its files get overwritten by the high-res texture packs 2 and 3. And obviously no Nexus ID for any of these mods, no version because they are official DLCs, and there's no installation information, no date, because they were not installed by Mod Organizer. So let's move over to this side. And we have, in the right pane, the default is plugins, a list of plugins, and any of you who have used a Mod Organizer before will recognize this. These are all of the selected plugins I've got, the 3 ESMs and the high-res texture pack ESPs. You can see the priority here, 0 to 7. That is essentially the load order. Skyrim ESM is loaded first, update ESM second, and it's 0 based, don't worry about it, and so on. This is the last ESP loaded. The more observant of you will have noticed this little icon, and that indicates that the file is a dummy. As the text says, the file is a dummy and it exists only so that the resource file, the BSA file associated with this is loaded. So the high-res texture pack 03 ESP is there to make sure that particular BSA file is loaded. And you do not need this if you let Mod Organizer manage archives for you. If you go along to the archives, you have this Have MO Manage Archives. If it is selected, and I would recommend making sure it is selected, you do not need these plugins to be loaded. They are completely and utterly superfluous. On the Archive tab, you can actually see all the different archives that are being loaded. You'll notice some of them you cannot deselect, but some of them you can. So for example, if you actually don't want the high-res texture pack, you can just deselect them there. I do want them, so I'm going to keep them selected. There are some other tabs, but I'm going to cover those later on. So I'm going to leave that back on plugins. You should also take note of this large selection drop-down selector. You have three different options at the moment by default: Skyrim, Skyrim Launcher and Creation Kit, and whichever is selected is run when you hit the run button. And this is something you're going to have to do when you want to play Skyrim with any of the mods that you have enabled here. Now, as you can see, I've got no mods enabled, so it's not particularly important. I could actually run Skyrim the normal way, and I would just get vanilla Skyrim. Well, once I start modding, I'm going to need to run my Skyrim from this button. Don't worry if that sounds a little like too many steps. There is a way to set up shortcuts so you go straight to the game, but using Mod Organizer. I will show you that later on. But that is really all you need to do at the start to get Mod Organizer ready to mod your game. It's now ready to integrate with Nexus Mods, so we can download mods and install them. It is ready to run your game, and basically at the moment, obviously it's ready to run the vanilla game. I have no mods installed. Now, there is one scenario we do need to cover regarding setting up Mod Organizer, and that is the situation where you install Mod Organizer to manage your Skyrim game, but you want to keep using Nexus Mod Manager to manage another game. For example, perhaps Fallout New Vegas, or one of the many games that the Mod Organizer does not support. And you can do that. It's not that hard, but you do need to set it up. So I'm going to show you with my current setup. I have Mod Organizer set up for Skyrim, but not for Fallout New Vegas. I want to carry on using Nexus Mod Manager for Fallout New Vegas, but let's see what happens. I'm going to use the Stayer Scout, a new mod out on the Nexus Mods, to show you that. Go to the File section, click Download with Manager, and I get this message: no application registered to handle this game. Basically, Mod Organizer can't handle it because it's not a Skyrim mod, and Nexus Mod Manager is not picking it up because I've told Skyrim Mod Manager to pick up this sort of thing from now on. Don't worry, it's not that hard to fix. So I'm going to click OK and close that down, and then I'm going to open up my Skyrim game folder and go along to the Mod Organizer and look for a file called nxmhandler.exe. Don't worry if the .exe is not showing. That probably means your operating system is set to hide known extensions. So I'm going to run that, and I'll get the NXM handler. It's a very simple window, and as you can see, my current supported games are Skyrim. So I'm going to add support for Fallout New Vegas, and I do that by right-clicking in this empty space and hitting Add. I then select the game I want as long as it's on this list. I will cover the other very soon. I'm going to select Fallout New Vegas. I now need to select the binary, the executable that is going to handle the Nexus download for me instead of Mod Organizer. And obviously for me, Nexus Mod Manager. For me, it's found under Computer, Local Disk C, Program Files, and Nexus Mod Manager. And it's the Nexus Client.exe. Select this and then open. Click OK. And I will now have supported games, Fallout New Vegas, Nexus Client. I then click Close. And now if I go back to the Stayer Scout download page and click Download with Manager, it will run the Nexus Mod Manager and work exactly as it did before. So what do you do if the game is not on that list? It's one of the other games. Well, of course, it has to be one of the games that is in Nexus, on Nexus sites, and I'm going to pick Dragon Age 2. I'm going to click on here to go to the Dragon Age 2 Nexus site. And you can set this up to use Nexus Mod Manager. It's pretty easy. What you're going to need is this name, this part of the URL, the part between the nexusmod.com and the question mark over here, Dragon Age 2. That is what I'm going to need. So I'm going to copy this. Then I'm going to go back to my nxmhandler.exe. Now I've removed the Fallout game registry for now. I will show you why in a second. But I click Add. This time I click Other. Select Binary once more, Nexus Client, and then click OK. And you will now see supported games other. I'm going to double click on the other. I'm going to delete it, press Ctrl V or paste, and add Dragon Age 2. Now, whenever I click on a Dragon Age 2 mod, it will activate Nexus Mod Manager if Nexus Mod Manager is set up to handle mods for Dragon Age 2. Now, I don't have Dragon Age 2 installed, so I can't show you that in action, but that is how you do it. Now, what happens if you want to add multiple games? And I'm going to show you. I'm going to add Fallout New Vegas to Nexus Client, and then I'm going to add Fallout 3 to Nexus Client. And as you can see, it's still only one entry, Fallout NV, Fallout 3. And the same is true if I add, well, let's say I was trying to add for Dragon Age 2. I've now got, let me extend this window, Fallout NV, Fallout 3, other. Obviously, if I want it to handle Dragon Age 2, I need to double click this, delete the other, and then add Dragon Age 2. And of course, I could just keep writing comma and then add the name of the next game, Oblivion, assuming that's correct. You should always double check whether that name is correct. Check on the Nexus site. So if I go back here, I think Oblivion is handled by the game anyway, by the mod organizer anyway. However, if I was to pick something like Mountain Blade, I would have to add MB Warband to this section. If I double click it, comma, you don't need the space. I would recommend not having the space. Make sure you don't accidentally have the slashes and so on. So I now have it set up so that Fallout New Vegas, Fallout 3, Dragon Age 2, Oblivion, and Mountain Blade Warband all redirect to Nexus Client, to the Nexus Mod Manager instead of Mod Organizer. And that is all there is to it. And that is it for this video. You should hopefully now have Mod Organizer set up exactly as you need to begin modding your game. And that is what we will be looking at in part 2 of this series, downloading and installing mods. You are of course more than welcome to join me for that video or any of my other videos, and I look forward to seeing you there. And until then, remember, as always, have fun.